This is John Cressman with monkeyuncle.com, and this is part 3 of our platformer tutorial. Today we're going to be doing, we're going to be adding a graphic. Right now we just have this little player graphic of a green box, and it's kind of boring, and it's not really how you would do it in your game. You might, depending on what kind of look you're going for. But we're going to add a graphic, an animated graphic for the player. Now hopefully you've been with us since episode 1, so you should have all the files that you need. And if not, you need to go to kenney.nl and download the Platformer Redux pack and also the Game Icons pack. Now you can also get the current status of the Platformer tutorial by going and downloading Platformer Tutorial 002 from monkeyuncle.com. So if you're coming in from our second tutorial, you should have the current status that we have here. So what I want you to do is go ahead and file, save as, Platformer Tutorial 3. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go home. We're going to go to Actors. Now right now you should have, if you go to Scenes and Game and Attributes, you should have created this player X and player Y. And that's going to keep track of the player X and player Y coordinates. But to do that, we need to come into Actors, we need to come into Player, and we need to constrain, because these are going to be constantly changing. We're going to constrain two attributes. We're going to constrain game player X to player, which is this actor, position X. And we're going to constrain game player Y to player or self position Y. And because we're doing this, we can do all kinds of things with other actors relative to this position. In this case, the graphic that we're using may not necessarily be the same as the graphic that we are using as our bounding box. And this can be the case in many games. You may have a actor who has big hair, but you don't want that hair. You don't want, say, if they shoot, you don't want them to hit the hair and kill the player. You want it to actually be part of the body. So we're going to come here to player image. I'm going to change this size to 64 by 128, which is roughly half the size of the graphics we'll be using. We're going to come under Platformer, and we're going to use Players 128 by 256, and we're going to use Alien Beige. You can honestly use whichever one you want. And I'm just going to copy this front one over for now. Notice how he doesn't fill up this whole area. I'm not sure why Kenny did it that way, but he did. So we don't want this whole area, especially this top blank area, to be part of the player's bounding box. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to our scene. We're going to open up our scene. We're going to pull this player onto the platform. And now we're going to shape our actual player. Remember, the one that has the image is called player image, but this green one is called player. And we're going to basically reshape it the way that we want, so that this will be the bounding box. So if they hit the arm or they hit this part of the helmet, that's not going to affect it, and also it's not going to collide with the areas of the platforms. So now I'm going to double click on the actor. Now it's difficult because there's two actors there. Let's go back. I'm going to move this actor out of the way. Now notice how we've resized this down to 36 by 70. Okay, but it's only this instance. So let's edit the prototype, and we're going to change those to 36 by 70. Okay. Now let's go home. And you have to kind of tweak this depending on your actor. Okay. You have to tweak this. So that's about right. In fact, we could even probably make it a little bit smaller, but we'll leave it the way it is. Now the important thing is we need to find the difference in X and Y because they're different sizes and heights, and GameSalad uses their center points as XY coordinates. We need to find the difference between the image and the player. So I'm going to click on the image here, and I'm going to look at his position. His position is, it's really his Y position because the way we have it, it's still going to be centered. So his Y position is 674. I'm just going to move him out of the way now. Click on him. And then I'm going to look at his position, and it's 645. So now we need to find out the difference. So remember, in this case, it's 674. And in this case, it's 645. So 29 pixel difference. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down here and we're going to edit the prototype. Since we know the distance is 29, we're now going to do two constrain attributes. And we're going to say player image position X will be constrained to game player X, because remember it's the same center, but player image position Y is going to be constrained to game player Y. Now in this case it's lower than, so that will be negative 29. So let's go ahead and look at the scene here. Notice I have the player image over here, and I have the player actor over here. So I'm going to hit preview, and you should see that one is on top of the other. Now obviously we did something wrong there. So what do you think we did wrong? Well, is he too far down? He is. So let's come back here. And while he is below him, we actually need him to be above because of the difference in actor attributes. And now, of course, you will see that he goes wherever he does, howbeit with a slight delay and a jumping around. Now why do you think that is? Notice that it's always the X that's off. But you notice that it's only when we scroll. So if you had to guess, what would you think it is? Well, if you come here to scenes, you'll see that when we drag that actor on, go to here to the layers, it threw it on the HUD. If we move it down to the background image, you'll now see that the player image will scroll with the other. So if you find that there's an actor that does not seem to be acting the way it should, especially when you start to scroll the screen, always check your layers and make sure that he's not accidentally on a layer that is non-scrollable. Or if you want him to be non-scrollable, that he's not on a layer that's scrollable. And there we have it. We have a player actor. But he's kind of boring, isn't he? I mean, let's look at, he's really just kind of facing forward. It'd be really nice if he kind of went left and right and kind of did what we wanted him to do. So let's go ahead and save this. We're going to home. Now to do that, we need to do two things. We need to keep track of which way the player is facing. So in our left rule, we're going to add a change attribute, and we're going to change game, I've already created this, player direction to 1. Okay. So if he's moving left, we're going to set player direction to 1. And we're going to come down to right, and we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to change game, player direction to 2. So 1 is left, 2 is right. We don't really need to do anything with jump right now. So let's go ahead. We're going to hit home and go into our player image, and we're going to create some rules. We're going to say if attribute game player direction is 1, oops, sorry, 1, then let's do a change image. We do a change image. Now let's come in here to the platformer. We're going to come down here and go to walk 1. We're going to move it over here. So we're going to change it to walk 1. Okay. Now, notice how he is facing right, but we're moving left because that's 1. So that really doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? So let's go ahead and actually get rid of that, because what we're going to have to do, since we only have one set of graphics and they're facing right, instead of setting that, we're going to come in here, we're going to change attribute to game, player image, graphics, and now see this flip horizontally? We're going to set flip horizontally to true. So if they're facing left, we're going to flip whatever image we have, and we're going to set that again, but we're going to do it in a different place. We're going to set that to true. Now, of course, we also have to account for being right. So if it's right, which is direction 2, we need to instead reset this to false. So left, we're going to flip it right. True, we're going to be flipping it left. Now it'd be nice if we could do some animation, and that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to click on animate, and we'll leave it at 10 frames. We're not going to restore the actor. When he starts off, he'll be facing, but once he moves, we'll keep him facing whatever direction he moved last. So to do that, let's again click this. We're going to drag this walk 1. Now I already clicked it. I already moved it over here, so it should say it exists. We'll just replace it. It won't matter. I guess it will matter. So let's go down to images, and we're going to drag walk 2 over here. So we have walk 1 and walk 2. I'm going to drag them up now. So there's facing right, and we have 2 frames of animation. We would rarely use 2 frames of animation, usually it's at least 8. So let's go ahead and file save. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, see, he's just happily moving along here. And notice as we move right and left, he is facing the correct direction. But he just keeps walking. And it just kind of looks awkward when we're still. And if you notice, there's no different graphic for when he jumps. So let's go ahead and take care of the jump graphic first. So let's go back into player image. Okay. Now to do that, we're going to have to set an attribute for when he jumps. So I'm going to come here, create rule, and I'm going to say when attribute game player jump is greater than 0, then I'm going to set the graphic to, and he actually comes with a little beige guy jump graphic. Okay. Otherwise, I'm going to drag the animate down in here. Okay. So if jump is greater than 0, change to the jump graphic. Okay. So we're going to show the jump graphic if the jump is greater than 0. Otherwise, we're going to show the animation. Now, right now, if you go back into player and you look at the jump, all we're doing is we're setting the linear velocity, so the actual jump behavior. We're not setting any other attributes. So if we then come in here, the change attribute, and we say player, game player jump equals 1. And actually, we're going to do some other stuff later with this, so I'm going to go ahead and do it the right way. So we're going to say player jump plus 1. Plus 1. This will allow you to do double jumps later on. So I'm going to hit file, save, and we're going to have and test it. And he's doing his little move thing. Now I'm going to hit jump. Whee! Oop, did you see that graphic? Oh, wait a minute. Now he's stuck in that jump graphic. Why is that? The reason why is that even though we set this to +1, what happens is we never find out a way to figure out that he's hit the ground, meaning that jump would be set back to 0. So we can do that by creating a rule. And let's move this right underneath the collide. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and constrain these attributes right underneath the collide event. I mean the constrain control camera. So now we're going to say when this actor overlaps or collides with the platform, okay, call this end the jump. So if we've if we've jumped and now we hit the platform, we want to change this game player jump to 0. So now I'm going to hit File and Save. Jump. Now now he's back down and he's happy and he's animated. Jump. And back to normal graphic. Jump. Jump. So now we've taken care of that graphic. So now how do we get him to stop moving? Since the player is the one doing the movement, the player actor, we need to go and create, a new attribute. We're going to call this, make it a boolean, and we're going to just say player moving. Okay? Rule, I'm going to move it up here underneath the end of jump. I'm going to call it I like to move it. We're going to say if attribute player motion linear velocity x. Remember, that's the one that we're modifying. Okay? So if it's equal to 0, we're going to change attribute, the one we just created, which is game moving. If it's 0, that means he's not moving. He has no linear x velocity. So we're going to set it to false. Otherwise, we know he is moving. His velocity is greater than 0. So we're going to say moving is true. Now that we have a way to know, we can come in here, create a new rule, and what we're going to do is we're just going to come up and put that animation inside this new rule, and that new rule will say if attribute game player moving is true, then we're going to animate it. Otherwise, we don't really have to do anything because it'll just stop at whatever frame we leave off at. So let's try that now. Move him over here, move over there, move over here. He stops. He's animated. Bonk. He's animated. Stop him. Animated. And there we have it. Now the other thing you might want to do in this episode is that green box is probably getting annoying to you. I know it's getting annoying to me. So if we come in here, we can come in the player color alpha and change that to a 0. And now we hit preview. All we have is our little player actor, and he's just happily jumping and walking and stopping. And there we have episode 3. We now have a player. We can move him with on-screen controls or keyboard controls. He can jump. Notice that we can jump many times. We'll be showing you how to control that. And it's getting closer and closer to looking like a finished product. So again, this is John Cressman with monkeyuncle.com. And please go to our site, check out our other tutorials. That's monkeyuncle.com. We'll see you in episode 4.